New York City, February 1973. A basement gym in the Bronx, the kind of place where legends are born in silence, where sweat stains tell stories, where the sound of leather hitting heavy bags echoes like thunder. That morning, something impossible was about to happen. Bruce Lee walked down those concrete steps, 135 pounds, 5'7", a movie star from Hollywood who looked, to most people there, like he belonged on a screen, not in a ring. But standing in the center of that gym was a man who didn't care about movies. Cus D'Amato, the most respected boxing trainer in the world. The man who understood violence like a scientist understands equations. The man who would later take a troubled kid from Brooklyn and turn him into Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet. Cus was watching his fighters work. Heavyweights, monsters, men whose single punches could separate your consciousness from your body. Then Bruce walked in. The gym went quiet. Not because they recognized him. Most of them didn't even watch movies. They went quiet because Bruce moved differently, like water wearing expensive shoes. Cus turned around, looked at Bruce, up and down, the way a mechanic looks at a broken car. Then he said it, those words that would change everything. "I know who you are. I respect what you do. But let me be honest with you, kid." He pointed at the heavy bag still swinging from his heavyweight's punch. One punch from a real boxer, a real heavyweight with real power, it would end you. Your kung fu, your movies, your philosophy, none of that survives a punch that carries 1,200 pounds of force. You'd be unconscious before your body hit the ground. The gym was silent. Bruce didn't get angry. He didn't defend himself. He smiled. That smile that people who knew him feared more than his fists. "Cus," Bruce said quietly, "can I show you something?" What happened in the next 16 minutes didn't just shock everyone in that basement. It changed how Cus D'Amato trained fighters for the rest of his life. And when Mike Tyson became champion years later, he used a technique that Cus learned that day from Bruce Lee. This is that story, the one the boxing world buried until now. To understand what happened that day, you need to understand why Bruce was even there. See, 1973 was supposed to be Bruce Lee's victory lap. Enter the Dragon was about to be released. Hollywood was finally giving him respect. Money was coming in. Fame was exploding. But Bruce, he wasn't celebrating. He was hunting. Hunting for weaknesses in his own system. That's what separated Bruce from every other martial artist. Most masters spend their lives defending their style, protecting their reputation, building walls around their ego. Bruce did the opposite. He actively looked for people who could expose his flaws. Boxers, wrestlers, judo champions, street fighters, anyone who fought differently than him. He would find them, study them, and if they were willing, he'd test himself against them. Not to prove he was better, to learn where he was weak. That's why he was in New York. He'd heard about Cus D'Amato, the man who understood boxing psychology deeper than anyone alive. The man who didn't just train fighters to punch, he trained them to think, to control fear, to become something beyond human in the ring. Bruce respected that, so he showed up, unannounced, just walked into Cus's gym at 6 a.m. like he belonged there. Cus was coaching a young heavyweight. Kid was huge, 6'3", 220 pounds of muscle, throwing combinations on the heavy bag that made the chains scream. Bruce watched in silence. He saw something most people wouldn't notice. The fighter was fast, powerful, technically perfect. But there was a gap, a tiny fraction of a second between his jab and his cross, less than half a second, invisible to normal eyes. But to Bruce, it was a highway, a space where an entire counterattack could live. Cus finished with his fighter and walked over to Bruce. No handshake, no fake pleasantries, just two masters looking at each other. Cus spoke first. "You're smaller than I thought." Bruce smiled. "I get that a lot." Cus gestured around the gym. These men hit hard, harder than anything you faced in your movies. Bruce nodded. I believe you. That's when Cuss said it, the challenge, the statement that would start everything. With all due respect, Bruce, one clean punch from any heavyweight in this room would end your night, maybe your life. Boxing isn't choreography, it's physics, mass times velocity, and you don't have the mass. Bruce listened, really listened. Then he asked a question that changed the tone of the entire conversation. Cuss, can I ask you something? When your heavyweights throw that punch, that 1,200 pounds of force you mentioned, where does the power come from? Cuss raised an eyebrow. Now he was interested. The legs, the hips, rotation, core strength, everything moves together.
All his training meant nothing if he couldn't hit his target. Cuss climbed into the ring. He looked at Bruce, really looked at him. You're not fighting the way we fight. Bruce shook his head. No, I'm not. You train your fighters to take punches, to have an iron chin, to walk through pain. I train to not be there when the punch arrives. You build tanks, I build water. Cuss nodded slowly. But water doesn't knock people out. Bruce smiled. No, but it drowns them. It wears them down. It finds every crack, every weakness, and it never stops flowing. Then Bruce said something that Cuss would remember for the rest of his life. Your heavyweight can knock me out with one punch. You're right, but he has to hit me first. And I only need to hit him once. Not hard, just in the right place. The liver, the solar plexus, the side of the neck. Precision beats power. Timing beats speed. And the mind that stays calm beats the mind that stays angry. Cuss was quiet for a long time. Then he did something nobody expected. He asked Bruce to teach him. What happened next wasn't a fight, it was a master class. Bruce spent the next hour teaching Cuss and his fighters concepts that didn't exist in boxing. Not because boxers weren't smart, but because boxing had rules, a framework. You couldn't hit certain areas, you had to stay in certain ranges, you had to fight in a specific way. Bruce fought with no rules. He taught them about centerline theory, about how controlling the center of your opponent's body gave you access to everything vital, heart, lungs, throat. While they had to go around defenses, he went through them. He taught them about economy of motion, how every movement in traditional boxing had a tell, a shoulder shrug, a weight shift, a breath. Bruce's movements had no tell because he moved from relaxation, not tension. His muscles were loose until the moment of impact. Then everything tightened for a microsecond, then relaxed again. It was like watching a whip, soft, flowing, then crack, then soft again. The fighters tried to copy it. They couldn't. Their bodies were trained for a different language, a language of constant tension, constant readiness. Bruce's language was different. It was jazz, improvisation, no fixed patterns, just response. Then Bruce showed them something that blew their minds. He asked Jimmy to throw his hardest punch, full power, at Bruce's chest, no defense. Jimmy hesitated. I'll hurt you. Bruce shook his head. Try. Jimmy threw it, across with everything behind it, the punch that had knocked out 14 men. Bruce's body moved, not away, it moved with the punch, like he was being pushed by a gentle breeze instead of a sledgehammer. The punch landed, but it didn't. The force dissipated, spread across Bruce's entire body. He slid back maybe 2 feet, stayed standing, smiled. That's 1,200 pounds of force? Bruce asked. Felt like 200, because I didn't resist it. I accepted it, redirected it, used your own power against you. Cuss was standing at the edge of the ring. His mind was racing. He was seeing something that contradicted everything he knew, but he couldn't deny it. It was happening right in front of him. Bruce walked over to Cuss. Your fighters are warriors. They're strong, disciplined, powerful, but they fight from ego, from pride, from anger. That's their weakness.
Bruce pointed at his own chest. "I don't fight from ego. I fight from emptiness. When you punch me, I'm not there. Not because I moved, but because there's nothing to hit. No pride, no fear, no anger, just awareness." Cuss nodded. Then he asked the question that was burning in his mind. "If you fought one of my heavyweights in a real fight, no rules, what would happen?" Bruce didn't hesitate. "I'd win. Not because I'm better, but because I'd do things your fighter isn't trained to defend. I'd attack his eyes, his throat, his knees. I'd use his power against him, and I wouldn't stop until he couldn't continue." Cuss believed him, not because of ego, but because he'd just seen it. The speed, the precision, the absolute control. This wasn't a movie star. This was a weapon disguised as a man. Bruce left that gym at 10 a.m., 4 hours after he walked in. Cuss walked him to the door. They shook hands. Cuss said something that nobody else heard. "If I had you for 6 months, I'd create a fighter nobody could beat." Bruce smiled. "If I had your heavyweights for 6 months, I'd create something that wasn't just a fighter. I'd create a philosopher who could fight." They never trained together. Bruce died 6 months later, July 20th, 1973. He was 32 years old.
But Cuss never forgot that day. When he started training Mike Tyson years later, he used something Bruce showed him, that concept of moving into the punch, of slipping through gaps, of attacking from angles that didn't exist in traditional boxing. Mike's peekaboo style, that explosive forward movement, that ability to get inside bigger fighters and destroy them from the inside out, it had echoes of Bruce Lee in it. Cuss never said it publicly, but people close to him knew. He learned from the master. Years later, a reporter asked Cuss about Bruce Lee. "Did you think he could really fight, or was it all Hollywood?" Cuss looked at the reporter like he was stupid. "That man could have killed half my gym in under a minute. And the scary part? He would have done it calmly. No anger, no emotion, just precision. I've trained killers, boxers who could end lives with their fists. But Bruce Lee? He was different. He didn't fight opponents. He fought the concept of fighting itself." The reporter pressed, "But could he beat a heavyweight champion in a boxing match?" Cuss shook his head. "Wrong question. Bruce didn't fight boxing matches. He fought life or death. You put him in a ring with rules, he'd probably lose. You put him in an alley with no rules, he'd walk away. The other guy wouldn't." That was the last time Cuss spoke about Bruce publicly. But in his private notes, found after his death, there was an entry dated February 1973. It said, "Met Bruce Lee today. Learned more in 4 hours than I have in 20 years. He doesn't fight with his hands. He fights with his mind. And his mind is faster than any punch I've ever seen." This story was buried for decades. Why? Because it threatened too many egos. Boxing was the king of combat sports. Martial arts were seen as exotic performance art. The idea that a 135-pound martial artist could dismantle the logic of boxing, it was unacceptable. But the truth doesn't care about acceptance. Bruce Lee walked into that gym weighing 135 pounds and walked out having changed the mind of one of the greatest boxing coaches in history. Not through strength, not through size, but through understanding. Understanding that fighting isn't about who hits harder, it's about who gets hit less. Understanding that power without precision is just noise. Understanding that the biggest weapon isn't your fist, it's your mind. Cus D'Amato understood violence. He lived it. He created champions from it. But that day, he learned that there was a level beyond what he knew. A level where fighting became philosophy, where movement became meditation, where the smallest man in the room became the most dangerous. So the next time someone tells you size matters, remember this. Bruce Lee was 5'7", 135 pounds, and he made the man who trained Mike Tyson rethink everything he knew about fighting. Not with a punch, with a principle. Be water, my friend. That wasn't just a quote. It was a warning. If this story changed your perspective, there are dozens more that never made it to any documentary. Stories of Bruce facing champions, soldiers, masters. Subscribe to see them,
because legends aren't built on what we see in movies. They're built on what happened when the cameras stopped rolling.